NFL and the NFLPA had agreed to bring in a disciplinary officer that would go over, was appointed by the league and the Players Association to rule on and administer a punishment for Deshaun Watson. So the league had argued for a hefty suspension of at least a year. The union argued that he should not be suspended at all.
League was hoping for an indefinite suspension.
Yes. Given the complaints against him for behavior at massage parlors. And the disciplinary officer came back and said 6 games. Now, I can say that hiring an outsider when you have two parties here in a collective bargaining agreement to set out the punishment makes a certain degree of sense to me. The problem is, I think in each individual's case and how you interpret this is, do you go by the letter of the law in that in the courts, everything was settled in civil cases and settled individually.
All but one.
All but one so far. But there isn't criminal charges here that are going to lead to jail time for Deshaun Watson. It's the balance of, do you take it literally, the law, the ruling, in terms of, hey, he wasn't found guilty in court, but he settled in civil cases. Did he settle to make it go away, or did he settle because he's essentially guilty of these charges?
Isn't that kind of the same thing?
Well, I think if you're settling to make it go away, you're like, look, I didn't do this, but I want this over with. I've got the money. Here, just take this. Just make it go away. And I mean, and to a degree, like, invert it. If somebody stole something from you and you just wanted it back, you can call the cops, or you can call them and say, I don't want to call the cops, give it back. Right?
Mm-hmm. Because
you just want your stuff back and you want it to go away. Deshaun, and that's inverting who the victim here is. But I'm saying, is Deshaun Watson saying, look, going through each of these cases, even though I didn't do this, if he didn't, or even if I'm not guilty of these charges or whatever, I just want this to go away. So I'm willing, to me, it's worth the money to make it go away. So I don't think they're the same things.
Well, in this case, I understand what you're saying. I'm not sure it applies.
Yeah, and I also am not providing an opinion on what actually happened here. I don't know. I don't know what happened here.
I think where it relates to this case, we can only look at what facts are. And, I mean, I have a bunch of questions about this, additional questions that just bring out facts. But it feels like you have to be cognizant of how you ask those questions, because you don't want to victim shame and be cast in that light. So what you do is you rely on the process to play itself out. And the way they had the process play out, they get an individual to hear the case, and she said that, look, it's egregious behavior, but it was nonviolent behavior, and the recommendation was 6 games. It's interesting, clearly, that the Deshaun Watson team felt pretty confident that what was going to come down wasn't going to be a massive suspension, although 6 games is kind of a massive suspension, but not what people had thought, what some people had hoped for. They released their statement last night saying, we're going to fully agree with whatever decision comes out, whether it's a year suspension or if it's a couple of games, whatever. We're going to abide by it, and we hope the NFL does the same, which was an interesting way of wording things.
Yeah.
Because it felt like they kind of knew what was going to come down, because in the end, this isn't a criminal case. They threw those charges out. So it comes down to a civil case, and you have everybody but one of the accusers settled. And you have to look at it that way. Another thing that I look at is that after these 6 games are done, he will have missed 23 football games because of the accusations. 23. Now, that's far more than a season. And people will say, well, they got paid last year. Yeah, he got paid last year. And the contract that he signed with Cleveland for the first year only pays him a minimum amount of money because they saw this coming, that he was going to miss part of it. So that salary doesn't really get eaten up too much on this either. It may behoove him that he's going to have to donate more money, but again, who knows what the settlements are that he's got here. But it's 23 games he will have missed because of the accusation.
If he's guilty of this, it's disgusting, and it's a horrible, horrible mess.
Of course.
And, you read stuff about people that he settled with who it happened and then went back, and you're like, well, why would you go back? And so I don't.
See, this is, and I agree with you. There's questions, but then you don't want to
tough one to handle. But if it's no, I don't. And
I
yet,
know.
And yet, that's why it's hard to sit here from afar and know what the right or wrong thing is. But if he's guilty of this, and I don't even like to say what I tend to think, but it really bothers me. It really bothers me.
There are things that bother me additionally about this, that the NFL, when they did their interview process, that they only interviewed, 5 women?
Well, that's the thing, though. This is only, the ruling is based on 5 cases. So you can say really 23 out of 24.
They threw one of the
exactly.
cases out.
So she ruled the 6-game suspension, the recommendation, is based on the 5 cases they gave her. And just like you said, one was ruled out. So it was basically 4 cases.
But this is the NFL's problem because they handled it how they handled it. And then they turned it over to, somebody else to make the decision. If the NFL screwed up their own case, then they have no one to blame but themselves. If they wanted a stronger outcome, then maybe you should have done a better job of interviewing people and presenting more of a case. But the NFL's in a tough position because they don't really want to do that because it's one of the star players in the league.
They do because they're going to appeal. They're going to appeal.
Looking for a strong.
But how dumb do they look when they appeal? But this isn't the first time the NFL has looked dumb when they've changed something. Because all they had to do was interview the women involved, and they didn't.
Well, what's going to happen is, because the gray areas, you guys were talking guilty, not guilty. That's legal stuff, right?
Yeah.
The gray area here is personal conduct, and the NFL can rule pretty much, that's however they see fit.
Code of conduct.
Code of conduct, yeah, exactly. So precedent has been set. So that's why people expected more than 6 games. With Zeke Elliott, Ben Roethlisberger, there wasn't 23, 24 accusations with those guys.
Right, but those guys also didn't miss 23 games because of it.
You're counting, but see, they're not counting last season. That was not an official ruling. These are official rulings.
But why did he sit out last year?
Ask the Texans.
Well, but that's the thing.
They are the ones who put him on the reserve list or whatever.
I'm just saying, I'm not going to tell anybody else what to do. I'm going to say for myself. I can't discount that he sat out 17 games last year. I think it's part of it. Do I weigh it as harshly if it were a 17-game suspension? No, but I think it does mean something that he sat out the entire. Yeah, to me it does. And look, I could try to sway you, but I'm not going to try to sway anybody.
I'm just going legally.
It
wasn't ruled upon.
out there.
Like the league didn't hand out that suspension last year. They handed nothing out last year.
Nothing out.
Nothing. This is the first actual ruling.
Yep. I mean, it was a pseudo suspension.
Yeah.
And did that play a role in what this independent arbitrator ruled? That hey, he missed all of last year too. I haven't seen any reference to that.
Me neither. I don't know if it did or did not. Maybe it did. I have no idea. Maybe she feels the same way you did, Gator. I don't know. But I'm just saying the fact is it wasn't ruled by the NFL that he had to sit out last year.
I can't escape, though, a feeling that far too much is doled out based upon, that he's one of the marquee players in the league. I hate that. It shouldn't matter.
It shouldn't.
It should not matter. And here's the other thing, the direct correlation that saw this coming, and so the contract was basically made to pay off these people and to pay off the complaints, or the complainants in this case, that brought the civil suit against Deshaun Watson. So it's a really, really difficult thing to try and wrap your head around and not get disgusted.